So I wanted to make a few videos about how I use ungrading with Canvas, but I realized maybe I want to start with just talking about methods of ungrading. So contract grading, you might have heard labor-based grading, whatever. So we want to try to help students learn better, and traditional grades haven't been helping. So I thought I'd take a step back based on talking to lots of different people who are doing different things and just kind of talk a little bit about ungrading methods and why. So why am I doing this ungrading method that I'm using? It's a way to be anti-racist and equitable, where all students have the opportunity to succeed. And it's a way to break away from traditional grading, which recreates the inequitable results in our institutions that we've seen in the data for years. So that's why I'm doing it. See if I can get my slideshow. Oh, there we go. So my philosophy of grading is based on contract grading. So that term, here's an example of contract grading. You might say to students, let's see if we can view this. Okay. Okay. So to earn like a 3.0 in the class, you'd need to fulfill that contract. And we're going to have to make that bigger. So you would need to earn 82%. Oh, excuse me. You'd need to earn a complete. So let's say I'm just grading your assignments as complete or incomplete. They're complete if you did the work. So you need to complete 82% of the group of assignments that I'm calling process work. You need to complete at least 82% of all the assignments that I put into peer work. So you can see I've got these different categories: process work, peer work, track and reflect on your process, and final essays. So to earn a 3.0 in the course, you need to have completed the practice for me on at least 82% of all of those, and then 100% on all 3 essays. If you want to earn a 2.0 in the course, then you need to complete 69% of all the process work, and so on. So a contract grading means I'm going to tell you in advance, these are the things you need to do to earn this contract. And we've got how to earn a 4.0 and so on. But this is just an example of, this is contract grading. So I say to you, you choose which contract you want to do. And then that, you know, that that's the work you need to do to complete the course. And this may or may not be related to what your grades look like in Canvas. This system was just created around, I'm going to offer you a contract that all you need to do is this, and that's the grade you're going to earn. So that's contract grading. And then, oh, let me share. Okay, not that. Okay. Another term we're using is called ungrading, right? I kind of like Duke University's discussion of ungrading, saying grading for growth. The primary purpose of this assessment is to help students learn and improve their knowledge. So they might be getting more just feedback during the course, formative assessment, rather than grades and points on particular items. It talks also a little bit about specifications for grading. What are the things you're looking for? What are the things that they need to do? I like, this is just looks a lot like contract grading here. My definition of ungrading is rather broad and is dependent on context. Mostly ungrading for me requires ways to give better feedback that encourages and supports mastery levels of learning and methods that enable students to take charge of their own learning. So this is just a nice discussion of what is ungrading. And here again, it says, what if you were to use some kind of a contract grade? Students who want a C in the course have to do a certain amount of work that meets the specifications. Those wanting a B have to do everything that those earning a C do, but more of it and higher quality or more difficulty. So this is kind of essentially contract grading, but again, ungrading is like, you decide what you want to do, and I'm going to spend more time giving you feedback and less time grading every single thing. Labor-based grading, you can take it all the way to the extreme and say, we're just measuring either how much time you put into something or how much work you produced, and that your grade is actually just based on that, not based exactly on quality. But there's all different kinds of labor-based visions. And so in the link below, I'll give you the link to this, which is Asao in a way explaining what is, let me see if I can make this bigger. What is a labor-based grading system and how will it produce a final course grade in a writing course? So he's saying a labor-based grading system produces your final course grade by focusing on how much labor or effort you do in this course. The more labor you do, the higher your final course grade will be, regardless of what anyone thinks of the products of that labor. One way to understand this focus on labor and effort is to consider what the course is really about. This is a writing course, not a paper course. Writing is a verb, a practice, it's labor. A paper is at least one step removed from that labor and learning. It is a product of your labor, not your labor itself. So our grading system should align with what this course is mostly about, which is your acts of learning, your labors of writing. So you can take that where you're really just assessing how much work did you do. And I take elements of all of these things. I used to have students actually track their labor intensively as Asao did. Currently, I've got students tracking and reflecting on their labor, and we do it for about the first 5 weeks. And that's part of them focusing on what I'm growing is myself as a writer. I'm not trying to grow papers. I'm trying to grow myself as a writer. So the requirements for 100% for me is that they just answer the questions. What writing did you practice? What did you learn about that? Was the assignment easy or challenging? What did you like about the assignment? Or what do you think you did well about? Or what did you struggle with? So they're reflecting on how did it go for me, right? So metacognitive learning, and then they have to track how much time did you spend on each assignment, and then they add that up at the end of the week, and then they just reflect on how did that go? What personal obstacles came up for me as I was studying? Maybe I'm not studying in a good place for me. Maybe I'm struggling with confidence, whatever it is. How did they manage that? And then what are they learning about themselves? And what are they learning about writing? So this is the part where it's an assignment and all they have to do is answer the questions and they get a complete for that. And so that's what I'm taking away from the labor-based element of labor-based grading, because they need to track their labor and reflect on it for the first 5 weeks. But I would say my philosophy is I am using like contract grading, which is if you complete this many practice assignments and this many extra assignments, then this is the grade you'll get. So Asao, in a way, I don't know how well you can see this, so there'll be a link to it below, but this was his original labor log. So students go in here, and this is interactive, and they have to write down what's the date, what's the assignment I'm working on, am I writing or am I reading? When did I start? Where am I working? Am I in my home office? Am I at Starbucks? How engaged do I feel? What is my mood? How many times did I notice myself getting distracted? What week is this? And then when they're all done over there on the left, they have to write down what's the total number of minutes they spent on that assignment. So really very much tracking, when are you doing the work? What is the work you're doing? Is it reading or writing? How do you feel? So all of that. So I'm again doing more of a contract grading, which is you can complete the work you want to complete for the grade. But these are all different methods of ungrading, getting students to focus on the learning and the work as opposed to just the grade. So when I take this, they do this in their small assignments, like that was an assignment. And then I go all the way up to their essay assignments and try to make it more of an objective checklist. Did you do the move? Did you answer the question? So let's see. I don't want to show that whole one. I want to show you. There we go. So the requirements to get 100% on the assignment, as much as possible, anyone should be able to look at their essay and say, yes, you did it, no, you didn't. So it's practice and it's meeting some specifications, but I want to be careful not to describe the quality of their writing. So one of their requirements is it has to be 725 to 1,300 words about. So people should be able to say, yes, it is, no, it isn't. Is there a statement at the top of one audience this is for? And is it chosen from our class list? So these are examples of, for me, ungrading, because I don't have a rubric of how good they did it. I just want to be able to say they did this or they did not do this as part of the practice for that assignment. So the entire academic essay, as we begin it, will have several requirements. And to any extent possible, they should be, yes, it's there, no, it isn't. So you'll notice, I'll take these two actually and put them over on my checklist. There's a thesis that states your main idea in response to one class source or more than one source. So I'm not going to grade the quality of the source. It just needs to somehow respond to one of the class sources we read. There's an introduction, body, and conclusion. I'm going to teach many times how we would do that in an American college essay, but I'm not going to, in the final 100%, I'm not going to judge what they put in there or what the quality of it is. So they can get feedback from me. They'll get feedback from peers, tons of examples, tons of practice. But when the final assessment comes, it's up to them how they do that work. Why do I do that? Because one thing is I'm ungrading for equity. Asau's book, Anti-Racist Writing Assessment, explains that I can offer my students lots of practice with our course learning outcomes, but I try not to evaluate the quality of those outcomes. Because when we start naming quality, partly it's reflecting white academic cultural norms of language and writing, and it's not necessarily mine to demand that they reproduce those. And also, if we assess students using one standard, which is usually that standard, students aren't evaluated the same. So let's see how well we can see this. The examples of authentic and honest writing from the collection. So professors were evaluating student writing on how authentic and honest it was. The examples not only reveal a middle-class set of tastes, but a clear white racial set of experiences and perspectives. Fegley's conclusions are ones about the ways that such reading practices by teachers are an exercise of Foucauldian power that is difficult to see, thus more potent and pervasive. Asau, I would add to Fegley's critique that it is race that functions in such daily classroom writing assessment practices, hiding behind power relationships set up by the judgment of student writing by teachers who use a dominant discourse. We use the academic, white, middle-class discourse. To put this another way, power is hidden more effectively because a set of white racial dispositions are already hidden in the assessment of various places, assumed as the standard. So this is just saying, for us, it's so much more helpful to help students learn and for us to assess their labor and their learning if we're not applying one standard of quality as an assessment tool. Also, in that checklist that I was sharing, an objective checklist creates space for students to make their own choices of rhetoric. How do I want to appeal to my reader? Audience, who am I going to choose? What's my purpose? And then what are my learning goals? What am I trying to practice as a writer? Independent learners are our goal, and they are more successful, as Zaretta Hammond explains. How do we produce independent learners? What can they do? So for me, I would argue that my checklist leaves room I'll go back. Yes. So here's my whole checklist. I'll go back to there we go. There's a thesis that states your main idea in response to a class source. I will give many examples of thesis. They'll practice it online. They'll practice it in class. They'll ask each other, how do you feel about my thesis? Are you understanding me? But I, the teacher, am not going to assess what I think is the quality of their thesis. So that gives them the room to decide. And they're like, oh, well, if I'm not trying to perform for a grade, then I'm actually trying to get my reader to understand my position. Or as a writer, I want to practice using my voice in this way. So I would argue that this gives them more independent learner practice, which is a form of the messaging behind ungrading. Okay, so that's the whole why. Why ungrading, and then what does it look like? Because you really are still grading some assignments, right? And you can grade them complete or incomplete, but I am attempting to create an objective checklist for those kinds of grades. So all of these links are available to you at the bottom of the YouTube channel.